suits in there,
Yeah.
and there's one specific
my
suit of armor that you kind of focused on for a little while, and I tried not to focus on it too much in the video, but you do mention it.
Yes.
And it's largely because there's Henry VIII liked to kind of protect a very particular part of his body.
I mean, I think what it's called, a conch piece or something.
Yeah. Welcome to Talk with History. I'm your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jen.
Hello.
On this podcast, we give you insights to our history-inspired world travels, YouTube channel journey, and examine history through deeper conversations with the curious, the explorers, and the history lovers out there. Now, today, we will be joined by Jen's friend, Bonnie, who is a former naval aviator who flew with Jen. So when Bonnie gets a chance to jump on a little bit later, we will introduce her. So, for those, I'm going to save our word association game.
Yeah.
So I'm going to save that for Bonnie. So if you guys are on the live stream, I want you guys to play along. And we're going to try to start doing this during the live stream as well. So, Jen, what are we going to be talking about on today's podcast?
So the reason why Bonnie is our guest today is because we went to the Tower of London together.
That's right.
And so this is our last video from when Walk with History was in London, in England. And Bonnie had come to visit me. We had house sat for a friend of mine, and this was one of our last things that we did. Very touristy. I had done it before with you for our honeymoon.
That's right.
About 15 years earlier.
I don't remember any of it.
I don't. But it was something that, Bonnie had never been. I think the Tower of London is pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a very iconic London historical landmark, and so it's cool for people to see it. So I was happy to play tour guide and show her around, and not much had changed since we had been there 15 years ago. Yeah.
One of the things that I didn't realize was how old the Tower of London was. I mean, you said it was first built in like 1066.
Yeah, 1066, William the Conqueror.
Yeah, that's almost 1,000 years ago.
Well, it has such a prime location.
Yeah.
When you think about it, right on the river there.
Yep.
It was fortified, and it was just it was built to last.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just been there for so long. Now I say it in the video, it has been sieged more than once.
Yep.
It has gone through many restorations, and it's an interesting location because it's where the king would be, or the king would go for safety, but it's also where they held prisoners.
Right.
And it's some of the last places people were before they were executed. And I talk about it in the video, but I don't really get into much of the history of it. But Queen Elizabeth I was she was held captive there by her sister.
Yeah, and you talk about, you kind of cover as you're walking in, right, how most everybody, and even Queen Elizabeth I, I get even comments about going through Traitor's Gate.
Traitor's Gate, because most people who are imprisoned are brought in through boat.
So, and I, correct me if I'm wrong, so I assume, right, there was a moat around the White Tower.
Yeah.
That's how they brought them in, from the river.
Yes.
So the moat was actually, I guess, connected to the river.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so they brought her up the boat. They brought her in there and just boated her right into the tower. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's why they called it Traitor's Gate, because most people who were brought in that way to the prison, this was like your last boat ride, right? Because you're going to, more than if you're going to the Tower of London, you are a prestigious criminal, and more than likely going to be executed. Elizabeth I escaping execution is rare, because we talked about Lady Jane Grey a little in the video, and when people can rival the throne, you are usually executed.
Yeah, they're seen as a threat.
Yeah, you're a threat. So the easiest way to kill the threat is just to kill you.
Right.
Right. Even if you say, "Oh, I'll never want the crown. I'll never want to be king or queen." It doesn't matter. You have a claim.
Right.
And with a claim, people can if they don't like the monarchy, they can start to build a resistance and use you as a figurehead.
Well, and we see that even today, right? If you watch Game of Thrones, they do the same thing, right?
So,
hey, this person is distantly related to that person who used to be king, and maybe they have the rightful claim to the throne.
Exactly. And you even see in there how some people don't even want the monarchy. They don't want the royalty, but they're seen as a figurehead for it.
Yeah, they're a pawn.
They're a pawn. And that's what happened to Lady Jane Grey.
Yeah.
In between, this is all related to Henry VIII. When Henry VIII dies, his son becomes king. That's not even disputed. But Edward dies young because he was never really healthy. And in between his death and Queen Mary, who's his first wife's daughter, Catherine, Lady Jane Grey comes onto the throne.
Yeah.
And they push her onto the throne because they're afraid of Mary's religious belief, which is Catholicism. And at the time, they're Church of England.
Yep.
Right? Henry breaks away so he can marry Anne Boleyn, who's the mother of Elizabeth I. And people are afraid with Catholicism, because what happens with religion at that time is it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
Right. And so
that's kind of how the monarchy would rule.
Yes.
With that.
If now I'm in charge, I'm Catholic, everyone must be Catholic, or you denounce your past religion, or you get executed. It's very simple.
Wow.
And so Bloody Mary is how she gets her nickname because of the Reformation. And so that's why they pushed Lady Jane Grey. Now, Lady Jane Grey's claim to the throne is through Henry VIII's sister.
Yeah.
Which is
pretty relatively distant.
It's weak.
Yeah.
It's a weak claim. I mean, it's still royalty. It's still claim-ish, but you're not descendant of the monarch. You're not descendant of
a direct descendant
of Henry VIII. So that's why she's queen for 9 days, and then she's executed in the Tower of London. She's like so young.
Yeah.
Doesn't even know what's happening. But again, the best way to rid yourself of the risk that they can cause is to just
kill off all your potential competition.
And that happens in the tower. And that happens we go to the location, which is like a little fountain now with the little, like a pillow.
Yeah, like some crystal pillow, glass pillow thing.
And excuse me, I'm still getting over that cough. What happened with that is I'm pretty sure it was Elizabeth II who went there and saw that location and thought about Elizabeth I and thought about her family and was like, we should have something here for Anne Boleyn and for everybody who had to be executed here, and how difficult that was to see, because you can see that location from the prison. So you're watching everybody get executed. So that's why they built that kind of nicer looking monument there where
now if we're walking kind of through the video, so that's like right after you guys kind of walk right by Trader's Gate as you're walking in the tourist entrance, and then you walk in there, you kind of point out that it's kind of neat, like the drawbridge, and then the double fortification, right? So that eventually they built an outer wall.
Yes, there was an outer wall and an inner wall.
Outer wall, and that came over time, over the centuries. And you bring up the Menagerie.
Yes.
So I thought that was actually interesting. I don't know why I wouldn't have thought that, but that's just not super normal, I guess.
Well, I think with power comes privilege, and with this privilege,
so they had them all. Like, did they have like a polar bear?
Yeah, inside the Tower of London.
Yeah,
they had a polar bear. They had an elephant. They had
which think about that.
Monkeys.
But back at that time, like as a polar bear, that means someone went all the way up to where there are polar bears, brought a polar bear back, and then brought it into the Tower of London
and gave it like a room.
Gave it a spot, right? And obviously that not treated well at all. And even they show the polar bear statue with like a chain on its ankle. But one of the most interesting things I thought was about the ravens.
So the ravens. So yeah, I want you to. It's definitely inhumane the way the animals are treated, but it's very typical of 1600s, 1700s animal treatment. So the ravens, there is folklore with the ravens that if the ravens leave the tower, the monarchy has fallen.
Yeah.
So when we visited 15 years ago, there were just ravens all over on the grass. And since then, they have built those cages. I don't think those cages were there when so I kind of make a joke about it. It didn't make the video. But I said, the way to ensure that the monarchy doesn't fall is to put the ravens in cages and keep them here in the Tower of London. There you go. The monarchy will not fall.
It'll never fall because they live in cages.
The ravens live in cages, so they're not going anywhere. So, yeah, that's kind of synonymous with Tower of London. So you can buy little touristy trinkets, and, you get the beef eaters. Yep. So you get the guys who kind of run the tower with the collars and the hats and the red.
Yeah, basically the circular collars that go all the way around.
Yes.
Almost like you put a dinner plate around their neck.
Yes. And then you get the guards who are just like British guards. They're wearing the black hats and they have the rifles and they're guarding the crown jewels. And then you get the ravens. So those are kind of like the three synonymous things that you can buy, little trinkets and things for Tower of London memorabilia.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, after you kind of walk through, because the Raven area and what some displays about the Menagerie and stuff like that, they even have a display elephant kind of sticking its head over one of the walls. Yeah, so you can kind of
see what that would have looked like.
Yeah, so it's kind of all spread around, almost like a mini zoo in there. Mm-hmm. Then you guys go into what's probably the largest draw, which is the White Tower.
So the White Tower is probably what...
And that's the original structure.
The original structure looks like a castle. It's very medieval looking. And even when you get inside, it's very medieval built. Big rooms, some spiral staircases, little closet areas, probably for privies or bathrooms, But what holds it today is the armor.
Yeah.
And they have all the armor for the monarchy, the older monarchies. And they have a lot of measurements from those monarchies, and they had built fake heads so they could measure helmets for them and things along that nature. And the horses also got armor, so they had horse armor.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat, right? I mean, you see it in movies all the time, but seeing it actually that's what they had, and it wasn't just the metal stuff. It was some leather.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
you got to protect your horse.
Yeah, different versions of it.
Yeah, I mean, because your horse gets stabbed or shot with an arrow out from underneath you.
And they had the kids' armor.
Yep.
Right? So that was Henry VIII's son?
I don't think so. I think it was some other royal child.
Yeah, I put the label in there. But it was neat. I mean, it looked like probably the size of a 10 or 12-year-old. Yeah. And it was a nice, ornate, suit of armor.
Because they have to learn and practice. And, you're still kind of the head of the army. So, I think Elizabeth I does a good job of that later in her career. She gets out in front of her army with armor on. And they don't really even make armor for women, but she wears a breastplate. And her presence gives them a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
They're kind of they like to see that their monarchy is there with them.
Yeah.
So it brings a lot of what's the word I'm looking for?
Prestige.
Prestige, but where you get kind of inspired. Brings a lot of inspiration to her people. So the same thing, if a child is a monarch, think of Henry VIII's son at 12 years old, you're going to build armor for them through their life.
Right.
And we talked a little bit about Henry VIII because it's his armor.
It's he's got multiple suits in there, and there's one specific suit of armor that you kind of focused on for a little while, and I tried not to focus on it too much in the video, but you do mention it.
Yes.
And it's largely because Henry VIII liked to kind of protect a very particular part of his body.
Yeah. I mean, I think what it's called a conch piece or something.
Yeah.
So I talk about this in the video. Henry VIII was very athletic.
Yeah, you said when he was younger.
When he was younger, he loved to play games, tennis, joust. He would fight with the sword. He would learn how to sword fight. But it was right between his marriage to Anne Boleyn and Jane Seymour, he gets injured in a jousting accident. And he's in a coma for a pretty significant time, almost a day, before he comes back, wakes back up. But he has a really bad leg injury that never really heals. And he's always, it's what starts kind of his gangrenous smell about him.
Oh, wow.
And he gets a bad limp from it. And he just kind of self-indulges with food. So then he becomes very heavy.
Yeah.
And so you get a real transition in Henry VIII's stature from then on. And that then you get what the iconic Henry VIII, like what you would remember, the last picture that's
the
painted of
heavy
him,
set. Yeah.
the heavy set with the beret, with his arm on his hip.
Yep.
And I bet he's even heavier in real life.
Sure.
I bet that picture is very...
Yeah, he's like, hey, painter guy, paint me a little thinner.
Yeah, I think that picture is supposed to be very pleasing to his appearance, but he probably did not look that pleasing at that point.
Remind me again, what years?
This is like early 1500s.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so it's early 1500s. But yes, that suit of armor, you can't miss it. If you just go watch the video, even if you only watch that one little part and then just laugh about it because it's hilarious.
But the tower has so much history. I talk a little bit about the princes. So before Henry VIII, Henry VII, his father, comes into rule, and he marries Elizabeth of York, and they have a bunch of children. Arthur is their oldest, and Arthur dies, and Henry's the second. But he marries York. Basically, it's the marriage of the roses. So the War of the Roses, the white rose and the red rose. The red rose is the Tudor rose. So, and then Elizabeth York is the white rose. And so they marry because there's such a big claim on the throne. And Henry VII has basically won the throne through battle. And before he has the claim, Elizabeth's brother and uncle have the claim, and those are the two young princes.
Oh, that's right.
And those are the princes that are killed in the tower. They're about 14, 15 years old. Both of their claims to the throne is much stronger than even Henry VII, but because they're killed and they no longer are around.
Well, and didn't you say that, I mean, they weren't like outright executed in the open square area. They were basically like sent to the tower and then just never seen again.
Exactly. That's what happened.
So obviously.
And then people kind of knew but didn't want to talk about it because Henry VII is now in power.
Yeah.
And then he marries Elizabeth York to kind of appease the people. And then she doesn't want to bring it up because it's still a volatile subject, and Henry VII is the king.
Family.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, you killed family that actually had a more legitimate, claim to the throne.
So again, here we get this killing to ensure your line.
Yeah.
And so what happened was they actually found a trunk with the skeletons in it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I would say about 150 years later.
Yeah.
And so then they knew for sure. It was always a rumor
that
they were killed. And then when they found the trunk, they knew for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And they've been reburied.
Now, one of the parts that actually didn't make the video was the armory. So there's the armor and the suits of armor and the horses and kind of talking you and taking you through all that cool stuff and the different styles of armor too. It was really actually really neat. But then they go into the armory, where I mean that was really what the other big thing that the castle did back then was it held all the weapons so that they could defend themselves against these other people who were trying to come and take over the throne or anything.
So most times the Tower of London is the last line of defense.
Yeah.
Right? Double fortified moat.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been taken over a couple times, back and forth. You get this War of the Roses that lasts a long time. The Tower of London is looked at as the seat of the monarchy. And so it goes back and forth between hands. So yes, there is a lot of gunpowder and cannons and things in the bottom. Nothing is active anymore.
Right.
It's all the old stuff.
But they have all the displays, right? So they show, these huge, storerooms of, for muskets or whatever it was.
Yes.
Again, like you said, the cannons and just all the stuff that they would say, hey, knights and guards and, our army, here's all the weapons, go grab them.
Yep.
Make sure that the bad guys don't come in.
So that's kind of like the White Tower. When you get in, there's a couple things to see in the Tower of London, and that's the big one.
Right.
And then, of course, the Crown Jewels.
Yeah, so you come out of the White Tower and the Crown Jewels. Yeah. Now, you're not allowed to film there. There's no pictures,
And the lady was watching me with my video camera.
So you didn't even really talk about it too much afterwards. So talk about going into where the Crown Jewels.
So the Crown Jewels are cool. You kind of stand on like a treadmill, conveyor belt kind of thing, kind of like when you're in the airport.
Oh,
and you
okay. So
stand on those things.
it pulls you
Yeah,
along.
so you can just stand there and you go past the crown jewels. So you don't even really get to sit and like look at them.
Oh.
But this is the crown that Charles will wear when he gets crowned king. And this is the crown that Elizabeth wore.
Wow.
And this is like the biggest diamond, right? Like the Hope diamond and like the emerald.
Oh, is that the Hope diamond that's on that crown?
It's all on the crown. And it has the purple velvet underneath. And you have to like practice wearing it because I guess it's very heavy.
Sure.
But it has the saber. And I think the saber diamond is not the Hope diamond, but it is the biggest diamond ever found.
Holy cow.
Is in the stabber or the saber. And then you got the globe.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the things and then you have other crown jewels that you would recognize. So one thing we noticed is Queen Victoria had that little crown that she would wear.
Yeah.
You kind of remember? That was in
so
there.
they had that in there.
Yeah. They had her little.
Oh, that's cool.
Her little crown was in there.
So that's like probably more her daily crown.
Yes. That's probably what
it's not so heavy.
Yeah. And then, so they have so the monarchy has a bunch of jewels.
Yeah.
Right. And they repurpose jewels. And as you see, like Kate or Meghan or Fergie's daughters, like they all wore tiaras when they got married.
Yep.
Like all of these.
So some of that stuff's in there.
Some of that stuff is in there.
Okay. So does the conveyor belt, is it kind of taking you by each display?
Yes. Kind of talks about them a little.
Yeah.
Where the gems came from, who made them, who wears them.
That's kind of neat.
And so that was neat.
And think about it, like just from a security perspective, that's probably a great way to actually kind of make sure that that nobody's lingering around. They can't.
Yeah.
Not without being obvious because they have to walk against the treadmill.
Yes.
And
you definitely walk in like big fortified vaulty rooms.
Yeah.
And then there's people everywhere. I mean, it's very like Ocean's 11. We just watched Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, I'm going to steal the crown jewels. It's like, how would you do it? You'd have to think of all those measures, to kind of take them.
Yeah, it's too bad that, and I get for security purposes why you can't take pictures or take video or anything like that, but that would have been a really neat thing to show. So
I know that would, they're all in protective cases and things like that. So the other things you would want to see when you go to the Tower of London is there's a little church there, and the last time we were there, we didn't even go into the church.
Now, I couldn't quite tell. Was there actually one church where some of these royal people that got executed were buried, or was there two?
One church.
It was just one.
So, and it was kind of, so there is a chapel inside the White
Tower.
Okay,
because you showed that we showed that briefly.
There's a little,
and then
chapel
there's the church that's outside by the execution grounds.
Yeah, right beside the building that holds the crown jewels.
Yeah,
but it's a cute little chapel, so that's another thing to see. And if you want to see where they are actually buried, that's a cool thing to see. But after you can walk the outer rim and the inner rim. It's kind of what we did, and that's where you get to see prison cells. You get to see where people were held. I mean, Sir Walter Raleigh was held in prison there. Anne Boleyn. People have graffiti on the walls where they like scratch stuff into the walls, and that's still there. And then you get to see the kind of rooms where the menagerie were, where they had the cages for the monkeys and for the big cats and the bears. And you get to hear about how they would get out and people would freak out and run around. And, you know, it's kind of where the menageries kind of ended. I think after the animals got out so many times, people got scared.
They're like, hey, we don't want that polar bear, attacking us,
killing us anymore. But so you can walk around the tower and we show you some of that. We're pretty much pressed for time at that. So we're going kind of fast. And I remember Scott was like, gosh, you guys are so fast. But that's kind of what we do there. But when we come out of the tower, what I didn't realize and what's totally cool is the tower bridge is right there.
Yeah. And this is, and just so you guys know, this is like a bonus. Mm-hmm. So we actually made, we made like a kind of bonus short video. Yep. Because the tower bridge didn't really fit into this Tower of London.
Yeah, and it was
video.
Quick. And we were just surprised that it was so.
It was
close.
Quick. It was like literally like across the street.
Yeah, and
so they ran over there, and so I made, you know, if you're a patron, if you go to Patreon and you look up Walk with History, you can actually that's where the video lives. Yeah. So if you're interested, you can go over there. Neat. It's neat.
It's iconic. It's like walking the Brooklyn Bridge. It's not as long. but
Right.
it's cool.
Yeah, it was cool because it's especially the color.
Yeah.
Right, the color I think is one of the things that kind of calls it out. Plus that iconic look when you look at the two towers
and the
right there
blue.
next to the and so if you ever kind of look up a picture of London, right,
Yeah.
and you see that iconic tower bridge, that's the Tower of London sitting there right next to it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's right
the bridge draws your attention because it's you
and
know,
it's almost
it stands
the same
out so
kind of
clearly.
stonework.
Yeah.
So if you look at those towers and then you look at the Tower of London, it's like, oh, it matches
Yeah.
the color.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome.
So who's Bonnie? Just so everyone knows. Bonnie and I went to Penn State together.
Well, I was going to let her tell the story. I was going to ask her to tell the.
Okay, can I have Bonnie tell this?
So we had just started, and so Bonnie, I have a couple questions for you first.
Okay.
For those watching the live stream, and if you're listening to the podcast, I have no idea how I'm going to edit this in. So, but can you tell our listeners how you know Jen briefly, and then kind of how you ended up in London with her?
Sure. I know Jen. Gosh, we met my sophomore year of college, or both of our sophomore years of college, when she joined Navy ROTC, and we were roommates at Penn State, and we were in ROTC together. And then when we both went to flight school.
Yeah.
And we were roommates in flight school too. And we also worked together in the tax office before we started flying flight school.
Nice.
So
I don't think I knew that.
We both did people's taxes.
We ruined people's
which
taxes.
I was totally unqualified for. But she's an accountant, so
Yeah, I fixed it.
I never assume that people have listened to the podcast, and my feelings are not hurt if they haven't listened to the podcast, because most of our guests are surprised at this next segment that we do. So I like to do a history word association game. So
geez.
you
This
don't
sounds
have
like
to
a
know
pop
history.
quiz.
All you have to all you have to do
Uh-oh.
is just
Good.
say the first thing that comes to mind when I say a word, and it's going to lead up to the topic. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. Okay. So if I was to say Sherlock Holmes, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Elementary, my dear Watson.
Okay. All right. That was pretty close to Jen's answer. If I was to say Edgar Allan Poe, what would you think?
The Raven.
The Raven. Okay.
My
Now,
favorite
if I was to say Heath Ledger, what would you think?
hot.
Okay. All right. If I was to say Scarlett Johansson, what would you think?
Big lips.
Okay. Now, if I was to say Beef Eater, what would you think there?
Tower of London.
There you go. All right. So all that's leading up to the Tower of London, and
Bonnie, my answers were close too.
yeah, your actually
almost thought we
answers
were
were pretty.
soulmates.
So what were your answers?
You said Sherlock Holmes. I said Watson.
I said Watson.
You said Edgar Allan Poe. I said The Raven.
Yep.
You said Heath Ledger. I said The Joker.
The Joker.
You said Scarlett Johansson. I said The Avengers.
Avengers. And then Beef Eater,
And then
you
Beef Eater, I
said
said
Tower of London. So I bring those up because Sherlock Holmes, and actually the second ever movie released in 1939, was one of the stories was about Professor Moriarty trying to steal the crown jewels. So that kind of little early. I usually make the first word very difficult and not too close. Edgar Allan Poe, the Raven, right? The ravens that were at the tower that you guys saw. Heath Ledger was in A Knight's Tale, so you guys saw the knight's armor. Scarlett Johansson was in The Other Boleyn Girl, and Anne Boleyn was executed at
The Tower of
at the Tower of London. Then Beef Eater is actually the kind of the guards or the tour guides that are there at the tower. So I do that just kind of as a fun way to broach a topic. So Bonnie, for those listening and for the couple folks watching, had you ever been to the Tower of London before? And if you hadn't, like, what was different than what you expected when you kind of showed up?
I didn't even know what the Tower of London was, really. I mean, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sure,
I'm not a
that's how I
history
would have
buff
been.
Like Jen.
Yeah.
No.
Sure.
She was like, the first day we're going to the Tower of London, I was like, okay, that sounds
Welcome
like
to my
something.
life.
So I really had no expectations. I didn't know it was right next to the London Bridge. That was the
Yeah.
place. Like the view from
Yeah.
that spot is amazing. You can see the whole city. You can see the bridge and as the backdrop, and then the tower. And it was so amazing because I had my own personal tour guide that knew everything about it.
Yep.
So I'm interested. It's just that I just didn't know about it. I'd been to London before, just once or twice when I was in the Navy. Like we pulled in, we were
Sure.
there for Trafalgar Day
Oh, cool.
celebration, and that was really neat. But I just went to London for like 2 hours, and we went on the Eye, and that was about it. And then so I've never really spent a lot of time there. So I didn't know what there was to see, and I figured that Jen had a plan, so I just didn't even worry about it.
Man, that is how I operate whenever we go anywhere. I was like, hey, just tell me where to go, and I'll point the camera in that direction. So what were some of the things that stuck out to you? Like, I'll start with the White Tower, right? So kind of you guys went in where all the armor was and the armory and stuff like that. What are some of the things that kind of stuck out to you when you went into the White Tower?
Well, on the way into the White Tower, that's where we came across the ravens.
That's right.
Which I thought was really neat symbolism. And I think it's really ironic that they keep them in a cage. And they're like, if the ravens ever leave, then that means that the monarchy is dead. And it's like, but you're keeping them in a cage. That's cheating. Right?
Hey, you know what? The smart play. Right? The English know how to do it.
Bonnie, we should let them out. You didn't expect that, did you?
And then the menagerie. So there was like a giant, I think it's in the video, like a giant elephant, statue. And so you can kind of imagine what it was like with all the animals in there, which I thought was really neat. And
that was something I didn't expect either. Even when I went back, and I think Jen may have told me about it, but when she's there for 2 weeks filming, 1 to 2 videos like a day, and then working, she didn't get to backfill me on everything. So when I was looking at the footage, I was like, I guess I just didn't really expect like a full blown small zoo, right? In the Tower of London. I thought that was kind of neat.
And there was so many stories, and I wish I remembered them now, because they had this thing inside the menagerie room that you could like lift up, and it told all the different animals and really funny stories of things that had happened to them. That was probably more fun.
Oh, wow.
Because I like animals. So, but I don't really remember any of them now.
Yeah, they were mostly funny stories of them getting out, right, Bonnie?
Yeah, mostly them escaping.
Yeah, escaping and chasing people. And
was there something? There was one of them that smoked a cigar or something.
Yeah.
Like
Oh, really?
Orangutan or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Huh.
Yeah.
They had
That's
personalities and stuff. And and like I was telling Scott before, like in their humanity was not the same as today. They were
the humane treatment or inhumane treatment.
Yeah, it was very inhumane. They had cages in there. They kind of showed you how they lived, which was basically just, we're going to get a polar bear and we're going to bring him to London and we're going to put him in a cage and there's the polar bear,
Yeah. So Bonnie, how about like going through like the armor? You mentioned you like animals. Like, was like the horse armor like cool? Was like any of the weapons, or you just like, hey, no, I like the menagerie? And then I like
the jewels.
I followed Jen through the rest of the White Tower and went to look at the crown jewels.
No, the armor was neat. There was a ton of it.
There's a lot.
There was miles of armor.
Yeah.
So you kind of get like disenchanted after a while. You're like, okay, another. Yeah. But then we came across the King Henry's.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier before you came on.
I saw that in the video. The video.
No, it was front and center.
I think that was the most impressive for me. Someone would walk around like that. Like, how embarrassing.
I know.
Would you walk around like that with your armor? Like, I don't know.
It's weird.
I guess when you're king and people aren't telling you like that looks weird.
Bathroom. That's weird.
I don't know.
It's unnecessary.
But so then from there, you guys kind of saw like the guns and the cannons and stuff like that. Now, Jen talked a little bit about the crown jewels earlier. Like, what'd you think of that?
Yeah. So we came out of the tower. Jen went off to look at the church, and I stood because there was a theatrical situation happening, which I like. There was a guy that, a beef eater that was standing outside, and he was telling stories. And
okay.
one of the stories he told was about Jane Grey and how she had to watch her boyfriend get beheaded.
Holy cow.
Like he talked about, like, this is where she was looking out the window and he was right here.
Mm-hmm.
And
wow,
it was really impactful. He's very theatrical about it. And then he was talking about the requirements to become a beefeater.
Yeah.
And he was really funny. He was like, the first requirement is that you have to have an amazing beard. And he had like this big beard.
Yeah.
And he was like, and you have to be extremely handsome. And I can't remember the
Smart
third
man.
one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was
Yeah.
like, and something else. And then he actually told the real requirements to be a beefeater,
Yeah.
which I don't remember as well. But
I mean, I think they're all former like military, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they
yes,
have to
you
have
had to
served
be in the military for 20 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
Lots of service.
20 years. And I told you, remember, Jen?
Yeah, you
There
told
were
me.
3
She filled
things.
me in when I walked over. She was like, let me tell you all you have to do to become a beefeater.
Yeah.
I was like, what? How do you know that? And you're like, he just said it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was just kind of interesting, right? Because they're getting folks who have most likely retired
Sure.
and served long and served well. And so they're like, hey, we don't have to think about this person.
And they enjoy it.
You
They
know.
want to.
Oh, I know why they're called beefeaters.
Yes.
Oh, why?
Yeah.
Because, meat was very hard to come by back in the day. And they had because they were so,
Important.
I guess, important.
Yeah, it was like
they're
prestigious
VIPs.
position.
Yes, they were given a ration of meat every day.
Oh, well, there you
And
go.
So
You know, it's not
that
too
was
complicated of a
special.
reason, but something that we probably wouldn't think about today.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that's very of the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and at first he was like, "Do you know why we're called beefeaters?" I don't know either.
Yeah.
He was funny. If you go to the Tower of London, listen to the beefeaters talk. They're funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny, and the history was great that he told. It was it brought it to life.
Yeah,
Sure.
well, and
Maybe you
I
should start
saw
talking
even
like
in
that,
the
Jen.
footage too. Like I heard in the background, like he finished some theatrical performance, and the crowd like erupted in like a big cheer.
Yes.
And I couldn't hear the story he was telling because Jen wasn't filming that, which was fine. But obviously,
if I could get a microphone on him, maybe, but to be like, I'm so far away and I can't hear.
yeah.
you.
And then you guys did see some of the guards, like they were actually. It's not like a changing of the guards, but they were changing a watch.
Yeah, like changing a watch. Mm-hmm.
It was the
And
guys.
he got a selfie with another beefeater. He was
Yeah.
really thrilled about it.
I know. He really didn't seem
He was
happy
like,
at all.
okay.
I'm sure they probably get hundreds of those every single day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know.
but from us,
I don't know. Maybe he didn't know. Maybe you guys weren't wearing your name tags or something like that. So,
Another Americans.
so
yeah. So then we went to see the Crown Jewels.
Yep.
Yes.
I know you asked me that earlier.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get around to it. Yes, we went to see the Crown Jewels, and that was really neat, actually. There was it was a little bit of a wait. So there was different rooms where they would show different videos.
oh, okay.
And I really, I didn't really have a great appreciation for Queen Elizabeth. I mean, kind of, but before her. But I think this experience they were showing her coronation, and they told some stories about
sure.
her,
And you guys were there
yeah, it
like
was-
a month before she passed or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
yes,
Like you guys kind of hit all the Jubilee stuff and all this stuff like just
We
before
did.
she passed,
Yes. Stuff that people will
Yes.
not have access to
Yeah.
now. And these crown jewels are going to play an integral part now when Charles gets
Yeah.
crown king. He'll
Yeah.
wear them. And they haven't
Yeah.
been worn for 80 years.
So you can take pictures in there, of course, and they put you. Did you tell them this already? I might have missed.
They're
it,
like
but
the
they put you
conveyor
on a
belt
little-
kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
a little conveyor belt. You're just
Yeah.
going past them.
I thought that was kind of neat.
Yeah,
That's smart
it
from a
was,
security
except that I kind
perspective.
of wanted to look longer. I was like, okay. whatever.
Yeah,
Keeps
yeah.
everybody
I
moving.
was saying earlier that like from a security perspective, that's probably a smart call. You just kind of keep people moving through, right? They can't linger, right? Hey, I don't
Yep.
need
Right.
Ocean's 11 over there trying to swap the jewels out for something that's
Benny,
fake.
Bonnie and Jen. That's
Yeah.
the souvenir we want.
Yeah, I want that one, but I want it more than that.
I want it more.
Yeah, so that was neat. I enjoyed that. And then I did go into the church after again and saw all the graves, that was really neat too.
Yeah.
It's really pretty, all the little Tudor style buildings and the doors are all blue.
Yes.
And I think there was a reason for that.
I forgot.
Some
You're
kind of
right.
color.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of like the London
About-
color. It's kind of
about
like the same
royalty
blue.
or
They try to.
royal
Is that
blue.
like the royalty color or something?
I don't know, but yeah, the
royal
doors
blue.
were all blue.
Yeah.
And then what'd you think?
Yeah.
What'd you think of the Tower Bridge? You guys went out after you
Oh, I
finished at the
loved
tower.
that.
You went
Yeah,
out
she
the Tower
loved it.
Bridge.
I loved it. We were late to work because of it.
Really?
I was like, we have to walk across
Yeah.
the bridge.
Yeah.
We
I
have
felt
to.
like if the boss is saying it's okay to be late, then I can be late.
Yeah, so we walked across the bridge. It was such a beautiful view.
Yeah,
It's
we
a
had great
really
weather.
neat. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a really neat thing. I liked it a lot. That was a highlight for me.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah,
that's
pretty.
definitely like if first time in London or first time doing touristy stuff in London, like it's a must do.
Yeah,
right?
and if we had time, you can climb those towers, right? People were standing in line, right, to
okay.
go up into the
You get
towers.
tickets.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
to go
But
up there.
yeah, we didn't get the chance to go up there. But you could do that. And I mean, honestly, people take that bridge for work. I mean, Bridget Jones, she's walking across that bridge for work. So it's like it's a traveled bridge. People
Yeah.
use it. It's not just tourists.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
It's cool. It's like the
Yeah.
Brooklyn Bridge.
Everybody's on it. Yeah. Yeah. That was really neat. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, well, again, for anybody watching the live stream, that's a bonus short episode. Bonnie wants to send you to see if we can send you the link.
For our
But
Patreons.
for our
Yeah.
patrons,
Our patrons.
that's a
Ooh.
couple minute video. It's
I know. They get the extra Bonnie and Jen show.
the extra Bonnie and Jen show. So
But we
I
did
didn't really
have.
start.
Yep. Sorry, wait.
Sorry, I didn't really start talking in the podcast till the third one. I was worried that I would mess it up.
No,
No,
you're
that's
not gonna
fine.
mess
Then
it
I
up.
started,
Not at all.
but now I'm feeling it. I want to do some more of these. I want to be Jen's sidekick.
We were so funny. If you watch our other videos, us at Buckingham Palace is pretty hilarious because it's like, what's the name of the flag? And Bonnie's like, I knew it a minute ago. It's like
well, Bonnie,
the two of us together.
I will say
Very absolutely
that,
fabulous.
that Jen tends to be much more distracted. I notice when she's filming these videos with you. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And it's probably a good thing because she's probably actually enjoying it for the enjoyment's sake because she's with you. The only downside is that if I'm not there backing her up doing other filming, her filming tends to just kind of like be more angled towards the ground.
Yeah, or you.
Oh yeah.
Or the bad jokes come out.
or the bad
I
jokes
know,
went-
I-
or I lose my train of thought.
I know. I noticed I was in a lot. I was like, the Tower of London one. It's like the camera was following me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're my gopher. Like you're the one in front that I can kind of like follow around. So one thing
This is
we
a
did
regular
do,
tourist.
if you're in London, you're definitely going to take the tube
Yep.
everywhere, and that's kind of what we did too. And right by the Tower of London tube, they had amazing crepes. Remember, Bonnie? We ate
Oh,
these
yeah.
amazing crepes, like with
The crepes
Nutella
were so good.
and strawberries. It was so good. So
yeah,
just be
little crepe truck.
yeah, that's kind of like their hot dog.
Yeah.
It's like the London crepe is the New York hot dog.
It's the New York dirty water hot dog
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
London.
We didn't care. We didn't care how dirty it was.
Okay.
It was really good.
All right. Well, so I'm gonna do my sign off for the podcast really quick, and we'll continue to kind of chit chat and do the live stream and this, that, and the other. But that way, at least I can wrap up the podcast portion, and then we can just kind of continue to ramble on
Okay.
as friends are
Oh,
wont to do when
great
we get to chatting. So, just shy of 1,000 years ago, William the Conqueror built the very place that Jen and Bonnie walked through last August. It's just a couple months ago. This was before things like the compass, the printing press, or eyeglasses, they were even invented, before these things were even invented. Over the centuries, the Tower of London grew, and it served not only as a home of English royalty, but also as a prison, an armory, a treasury, menagerie, and the home of the Royal Mint, public records office, and yes, the home of the crown jewels of England. Access to this blast of the past isn't limited to high-action heist movies or Hollywood dramas about the English monarchy, but it's available to you and I to do the very things that we encourage here, and that is to go out and walk with history. Thank you for listening to the Talk with History podcast, and please reach out to us at our website, talkwithhistory.com. But more importantly, if you know someone else that might enjoy this podcast, please share this with them, especially if you think that today's topic would interest a friend. Shoot them a text and tell them to look up the Talk with History podcast, because we rely on you, our community, to grow, and we appreciate you all every day. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.